So I'm here with Anna Yarde. Hi Anna, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
We just want to have a conversation with you today about your thoughts on the future of the bar, what you think the future barrister looks like. And I know that a lot of people come to you on social media like LinkedIn to talk about pupillage and so forth. So we thought we'd have a chat across these variety of topics. But let's start nice and easy. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your personal journey toward becoming a barrister?
Thank you. So my name is Anna Yarde. I am a barrister at Harcourt Chambers. I am a family law practitioner and I specialise in the law relating to children. That's both public law children and private law children. And I also do work involving domestic violence and other topics like forced marriage.
Lovely, thank you. Whilst you're on your journey towards becoming a barrister, are there any pivotal moments that you think really influenced the direction you took or gave you the confidence to continue that journey?
I think there are lots of pivotal moments that you have in your first 10 years of practice, and actually in the build-up to becoming a barrister as well. There are some moments that I suspect everybody has, which really drive them to carry on that journey, but really early on. So I remember one that I had at university. I was in my final year. I think I just finished my final exams. I was exhausted. And we all had meetings with our director of studies to talk about next steps. What did we feel like doing? What were our interests? Were there any people in our network that we could connect with? Anyone who just graduated who might be able to give us some advice? And I said, what I really want to do is I want to go to the bar. And my director of studies looked at me and said, well, tricky. It's difficult. And lots of people don't go straight from university to the bar. So you might have to think about some other options, have a think about doing a master's, think about what you might do if there are some gaps in your CV. And I just thought, I'm just going to have to do it. I'm going to have to just go. I don't have a plan B and I don't want a plan B. And if I need it, I'll think about it then. At the moment, I'm all in. This is what I'm doing, and I'm going to have to just keep going, and I'm going to have to make it work. And I think sometimes those moments where actually people are saying to you, oh, it's a bit hard, that's quite difficult, and you might need to have some other options. It's really important to have those conversations and think about what will you do if things don't quite work out. But it's equally important to have those moments that really drive you on, or you have to look at yourself and you have to say, actually, I'm giving this everything. It's going to be hard, but I want it partly because it's hard and I'm going to keep going. So I think some of those pivotal moments happen really early on when you're making the choice and when you're really committing to what is quite a difficult pathway to go down. And then I think as you become a barrister and you do cases that are really important to real people and are really difficult, you have some really pivotal moments early on. I think being a family law practitioner is a real roller coaster. You have some real lows when your client is dealing with the most difficult things or the most difficult outcomes, or you're dealing with a really difficult point of law or a really difficult expert that you've got to cross-examine and you've really got to think about how you're going to approach it. But the highs are amazing as well. I mean, I'm so privileged that part of my job occasionally is telling people, getting your baby back, or you can go and pick your child up from foster care today. I've just spoken to the social worker. They've agreed. You've done it. And you can go and get your child. And those moments are so pivotal because you need them to keep you going through the difficult parts. But I think the important thing to remember as well is that sometimes the moments that really shape a career are the ones that happen in between. It's when you show up every day at court, no matter who the client is or how good their case is or what their case is. And in those in-between days, you go to court and you do a good job. And you go home and you think, I did a good job today. And all those little moments, they add up. So that over time, you can look back and you can think, actually, I've showed up consistently. I've done the prep work. I showed up for my client. I thought carefully in advance about what they needed, and I delivered it, regardless of the outcome. And eventually, all those little moments in between those massive highs and the crashing lows, they add up to give you the confidence that you need to keep you going, especially when things are difficult. You've got that bank that you can draw on of all those little moments.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like we got a real sort of sense of depth into your day-to-day a little bit there as well. Do you think that, and the keywords I picked out of that were sort of commitment, do you think that sense of commitment and endurance are things that are just key characteristics in barristers?
Absolutely, and resilience as well. And I think resilience is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but it's particularly relevant to this profession. It's difficult. The job is hard, and there are challenges in every case. And there are some days you lose. You lose at court, and you have to be able to reflect on what you brought to the case, what you might have done differently, what questions perhaps could have been different, what strategies could have been different. And you do it both for your own case, but you also think about the case everybody else was running. Think about what your opponent was doing. What were they doing? What was really impressive about their work? What points did they not make that I would have made? And you have to have the resilience to be able to go away, reflect on it, and keep the commitment going and say, right, I'm going to endure this. I'm going to turn up tomorrow, and I'm going to do the same, or I'm going to do better. And this is what I've learned, and this is how I'm going to keep going. And that's really hard because these are people's real lives. And you know that every day that you show up at court, you know that that day for your client is the most important out of all the days, particularly in family law, particularly when we're dealing with children. I mean, there is nothing more important. So you know every day how important it is to your client, and you have to be able to keep going. You have to be able to reflect on your own performance and how you can meet the needs of your client that comes tomorrow or the day after or the day after that. And that does take resilience. There's no way around it, because it is really challenging, and it forces you to look into what you're offering and what you can do in the future. So it's so critical that anybody who's coming to the bar knows that that's going to have to be a part of their professional life, and thinks very carefully, with themselves, with their colleagues in chambers, about how they can make sure that that's being nurtured and that's being fostered, because it is really important.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that answer. I think that's a great sort of jumping off point to ask the question about looking back to your early career. Aside from this note of resilience and commitment and endurance, is there anything else that you would like to offer as advice to your younger self?
I think if I was to speak to myself now, just starting up, what I would say is keep reading, keep listening, keep learning, and then trust your own judgment. Because then you're doing absolutely everything you can. Keep going and trust in yourself that you are doing the absolute best job that you can, and you're offering everything that you can to your client.
That's great. Thank you so much. Well, I think that's a lovely opener on the notes of your personal journey. So as we know, 8th of March is International Women's Day. Yes. So I thought we'd have a little bit of a chat on that. We're an all-female team today to get this video out. So we know that from the Bar Standards Board, they released numbers that said that over the recent years, there's been of the self-identified women, there's been a higher number of them than the men coming to the bar in recent years. But then if we look at the overall makeup, it's roughly stayed the same, around 34-35%. I was really curious as to get your opinion on why you think that is, why we've seen an upward trajectory of the women coming to the bar recently.
I think it's a really important question, and I suspect it's one that individuals and chambers are asking themselves. It's really important to distinguish, first of all, between those who are called to the bar and those who enter into self-employed practice. Mm. Now, those who are called to the bar have done the bar course. They've got a qualifying law degree. They may well intend to become a self-employed barrister, or they may not. They may intend to use that qualification to do something different. Their career may have already taken a slightly different path, or they may be interested in pursuing a career at the employed bar. So when you look at the two sets of statistics, first of all, it's really important to break it down in that way so you can think, actually, what are we looking at here? Now, my experience is solely as a self-employed barrister, and there are far more self-employed barristers than any other type of barrister. So that's the most common sort of barrister that you might meet or might talk to about this particular subject. And the statistics that the Bar Council released recently about incomes, self-employed fee income, the fee earnings at the bar, show that at the moment, of self-employed barristers in practice, women are in the minority. And that varies quite widely between practice areas. Family law is the only field of practice in which the women outnumber the men. There are over 60% of family barristers are female. And then there's a real range. I think it goes down all the way to, in Chancery and commercial law, barristers are about 25% female. So we've got a huge difference across the different areas of practice. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that, because there may well be different factors in play in all of those different areas. And that's why we all have to take responsibility, really, for looking at both our own individual path, our path within Chambers, and then the collective as a whole as well. I think there are a number of reasons why women in the past have been in a minority. But I do think there are a number of really exciting changes now that are happening that make it much more likely that women are going to be attracted to a career at the bar. It's not really that long ago that women started to become barristers. You look back, there aren't that many women compared to men who are silks. So if you look at role models and what students and young people are seeing, it hasn't always been the case that there have been a huge number of female role models. Now that has changed. We do have far more female role models. If you think back to Brexit and all of the litigation around that, and the role that Baroness Hale played, and she was being nicknamed on social media the Beyonce of the law, and all of a sudden there was a real interest in what she had to say about things. And it's really helpful for young women who are considering whether or not this is a career option for them to be able to see it, to be able to see someone doing it and see that perhaps the glass ceilings that they have in mind and the questions that they're asking themselves about what they can achieve and whether they're going to face obstacles that they perhaps don't want to have to confront or shouldn't need to. It's really important to be able to see those people who've gone beyond them so that you have something that you can aim for. I think there is a difference now in the way that we talk about women at the bar. So when I did the bar course, I was told in a lecture with everybody else, in no uncertain terms, you cannot wear nail polish to court. Women do not wear nail polish. And again, there are good reasons why that advice is being given at the time. But as the person sitting in that lecture theatre, you might be asking yourself, well, I paint my nails. Do I need to change who I am to fit in with this career? And to fit in with everybody else who's there. And what else might I need to change about myself? Nail painting sounds quite basic, but actually, if you're thinking about what makes you feel like yourself and how you identify as a person, being told to change that, or this might have an impact on your career, or this might have an impact on the way that other people think about you, is really fundamental. And I like to think, I sit here with painted nails, that actually there's a different attitude now. And actually, when I was called to the bar, nail polish might have been the thing of the day. It wasn't that long before that women couldn't wear trousers to court. And it wasn't that long before that women weren't really seen at the bar at all. So there's been a huge amount of progress. And I hope that the way that 21-year-old, 22-year-old women are being spoken to about what their career could look like is much more about what they bring to the table than what they might need to change about themselves in order to fit in. And I hope that that will ultimately result in more women, more students thinking, I can see myself doing that job, because that's so important. I think the other important aspect of making sure that there are more women at the bar, and importantly, more women who stay at the bar, because it's all very well having the statistics about women coming to the bar. We need to keep them there. And at the moment, the statistics about retention are quite worrying, and the statistics about the number of female silks compared to male silks are quite worrying. There's work to be done there. And what we do see in Chambers, and what we see people talking about more, are specific ways that we can support women at the bar. Now, when I was looking at which chambers I might want to join and where I was going to apply to for pupillage, one of the questions that I knew I needed to ask was, is this a chambers that has a flat rate rent policy? Or do you charge your members solely based on a percentage of what they earn? Now, the reason for asking that question of every single chambers is to work out how likely they are to support different ways of working and to support women during maternity leave or parental leave. And it goes both ways. If you want to take time out of work, or you are hoping that that's going to be in your future, you need to know that you can afford to do it. And so I had to work out whether I would be charged to remain a member of Chambers for all that time I was away and not earning, or whether I was going to simply pay a percentage of what income I received. Now, not only are there now very open conversations about the potential implications of discriminatory policies on women or those who want to work part-time or those who want to take parental leave, whether they're male or female, those with caring responsibilities and those with disabilities, and how certain policies might be discriminatory. But actually, chambers are starting to go further than that. And we see chambers devising parental leave policies. And we have chambers, and I include my own in this, talking about fertility and menopause and how we can make sure that the policies we have in place really support women to stay at the bar. And those can be really fundamental policies, or they can be steps that are much smaller. It can be, we are going to have a written policy that tells every member of chambers, whether male or female, that if you are going to embark on fertility treatment, you can ask your clerks to have a meeting about it and you can discuss it. And it's going to be written down. So everybody who comes here is going to know, as soon as you start to think about that and you're starting to think about what impact it might have on your practice, you can have that meeting. That can be the first step, and you can talk about what your needs are likely to be to your clerks. Having those sorts of policies in place and being able to talk about them makes the bar much more attractive to people who see that as possibly being something that might be in their future. Because particularly with something like the bar, where you're making a significant investment, both financially in terms of your time, you have to know that you're going to be able to have a career that's going to last. You're investing in yourself for the long term, not just for something that's going to be for a short period of time. So having all of those policies is one way to show young women who are coming to the bar that there is longevity here. You can come and you can stay and you will be supported. That hasn't always been the case. And I hope that those sorts of things are part of what is going to mean that there are more female barristers in future.
That's fabulous. It's really heartwarming to hear, to be honest. It sounds like they're really leading with transparency, and that transparency directly impacts and benefits women. So it's really, like I said, heartwarming to hear that it's moving in that direction. I was going to ask, sort of on International Women's Day, is there a message that you'd like to convey, really? I know that you're contacted by a lot of people who are aspiring barristers. Is there anything that you would like to convey specifically in support of International Women's Day?
I think in support of International Women's Day, what I would want to say to anybody who identifies as female is simply, you belong. You belong here.
That's brilliant. I don't think anyone could say it better. That was great. That was absolutely lovely. So let's move on to pupillage and talk a little bit about the important skills that aspiring barristers should focus on developing, maybe professionally and personally, and whether or not you've seen a change in that. Perhaps when you initially called to the bar, or even earlier talking to older colleagues, and I'd be really interested to hear a little bit about that.
I think there's a huge overlap between professional and personal, actually, because I think some of the qualities that are really important when you're starting pupillage are really important on a personal level as well. I think one of the qualities that is really underrated, or traditionally has been underrated, is empathy. Empathy is so important, and I think it often gets labelled as a soft skill. Perhaps sometimes it is slightly seen as a gendered quality, one that applies to certain types of barristers more than others, and one that applies to certain fields of practice more than others. It's easy for me to talk about it as a family law practitioner, because I should think that lots of people will think, well, of course it's important to you, but actually it's really important to all barristers to develop that real sense of empathy with your client. It's not just about good client care. Good client care is so important, and you have to develop your ability to empathise with your client, who might be really different to you, might have really different lived experiences, so that you can look after them at court. But it's also really important so that you can present your case as well as possible, because unless you have empathy and unless you can really understand your client and what they have been through and what's really important to them about their case, you're not going to be their voice. And the whole point of being a barrister is to advocate for your client and to be the voice that they would be if they had all the skills that you do, if they had the confidence, if they had the learning that you do. So unless you have that empathy, which we have to work on the whole time, you can develop it. Unless you have that, you can't present the strongest case because you're not being their advocate. And I think that sometimes gets forgotten. So it's something I always think is really important to emphasise to anybody who is embarking on pupillage. It's not just about book learning. It's not just about learning the law. Often barristers are going to assume that if you are a pupil, that already you have a basic understanding of the law, that you have an interest in acquiring more and more knowledge. You need that. You need to be constantly learning and constantly acquiring that knowledge and that experience. Don't leave behind those other qualities that are more often perceived as extra or about a certain part of the case. It's not. They are intrinsically linked to whether you are going to run the best legal arguments, the best fact-based arguments, and it's intrinsically linked to the outcome that you're likely to get for your client, because if you understand them better, you understand their case better. And if you understand their case better, you have a much better chance of getting the outcome that they want and that you therefore want.
Lovely, thank you. I couldn't agree more about sort of emotional intelligence basically being viewed as more than just a soft skill. I think it's very easy to sound dismissive of soft skills for a start. And quite frankly, I'm sure there's plenty of times when lots of us wish that we've entered into a meeting and then we've thought, has someone read the room here? So I love that. Thank you so much. Bit of a bigger question for you here.
Okay.
Forewarning. What do you think the future barrister looks like? How are they different to today's?
I think, first of all, probably there is something that all barristers are likely to have in common. And that is being completely drawn to advocacy. That is something that connects all barristers. Being a barrister is completely addictive. Once you're in, you can't imagine doing anything else, because the highs and the lows that we've talked about already are so high and so low. The adrenaline from being in court and cross-examining, it's electric. So there will always be that common thread between all skilled and capable advocates, that everybody has that, and that real drive to run their case in the best possible way. But what I hope will be different in future is that the bar will be more diverse. We need it to be more diverse, because if the bar is going to best serve society and its client base, it needs to be reflective of it. We need more barristers who are women. We need more barristers who identify as LGBTQ+. We need more barristers who identify as belonging to an ethnic minority or a different cultural group or a different religious group. Because what you want to have at the bar is an advocates room where people are discussing a variety of life experiences. You want a bar where you go to court and you listen to another advocate say something and it resonates, because they have lived it, or they truly understand it, or they've had an experience that is different, but there is something that connects the two experiences. And you want it from judges as well. You want to know that when judges are thinking about their cases, or perhaps talking to a colleague about cases, that there is diversity amongst the judges as well. Because the more diversity there is, the more we reflect the people whose lives we're making really important decisions about. And that will improve outcomes for all of those people, because everybody brings unique experiences and everybody brings unique skills to the job. The more of them we have and the more of them we collect and the more we expose ourselves to each other's unique experiences and unique skills, the more we build that huge bank of knowledge, and the more we develop that empathy as well, so that we can really understand what these experiences are. And if we do that, it will be better for justice.
Brilliant, thank you. And a question now, veering onto the topic of social media, which I'm sure that a lot of aspiring barristers who reach out to you about will be contacting you through or about. Tell us a little bit about how you use social media in your professional life, day to day.
So it probably can fairly be described as a love-hate relationship with social media. I will be honest with you. I post semi-regularly on LinkedIn. And the reason that I started really was because we'd had the pandemic. We'd had COVID. I'd had some periods of parental leave, and I was doing a period of part-time working as well. And during those times, it wasn't always easy to engage with conventional networking and marketing efforts. it's really hard to go to an evening that starts at 6 o'clock in the evening and you don't know when it's going to finish and you're exhausted, or you've got children that you need to go home for, or at the other end of the spectrum, I imagine it applies equally to those who have caring responsibilities for older relatives. And there'll be a whole load of reasons why this will be true for other people as well, whether it is disability or anything else that they've got going on in their personal life. And so what I decided to do was start using LinkedIn. I knew that I wanted to strengthen the connections that I already had, and I was looking to build new relationships as well. I really love my job, and I like talking to other lawyers who love their jobs, and I like talking to other family law practitioners as well. That was a way that I could do all of those things whilst I had a baby at home, or when I only had half an hour and I was sat outside a ballet lesson and I had that short window of time where I could do something. And so I started using LinkedIn really for that reason. And then as I started to use it more and more, I quickly realised that there were extra benefits to using LinkedIn as well. Now, one of those is recruitment, and it's the one that you've already mentioned. It's about students or potential pupils who want to get in touch and they want to ask questions. Now, I did a post towards the end of last year in the autumn, and it was a really quick post. It was 5 minutes, and basically what I'd done is I was preparing to go to the Royal Courts of Justice for a really special ceremony, and I was robing up. I needed my wig and my robe, and I needed my collarette, which is the white part, which has the 2 white bands on it. And I always prepare for these events in the same way, and I straighten my collarette because it's really easy to get a lovely crisp finish. And I just, as I was doing it, I thought, you know what? There is at least one person who needs to see this, who will be in a student room or thinking about the next steps, and who will see that photo of a pair of straighteners and a collarette and think, I can imagine myself doing that. I can relate to that. That is somebody who is doing something that I can see in my future. So I took the photo and I did the post, and really it was about social mobility at the bar. It was, this is what people need to see. There is more to being a barrister than what you see on TV or what you read about in textbooks, and this is real life. And after I did that, I received loads of messages and loads of follows from predominantly students. And it was a real life demonstration of the power of social media to be able to show to people, you could belong here too. I'm a normal person doing a normal thing, and you can relate to it. And I think that's a real benefit of using social media as a barrister. It's a career which is bound up in tradition, for better or for worse. There are some aspects of it that I think are so special, and we must absolutely celebrate and cling on to. But that mustn't come at the sacrifice of showing other people that actually there's more to it as well, because we are real human beings. And I think whatever we can do to demystify it and to show people that there are so many dimensions to life as a barrister are really valuable for recruitment. And that wasn't something that I necessarily anticipated when I started, but it became obvious to me as I kept posting. And the more I kept posting, the more other opportunities came up as well. And I started to realise that actually, when I go into a courtroom or when I go to a networking event, there are plenty of people there who actually know exactly who I am, and they know what's important to me, and they know what I'm bringing to the table because I've shared it and I've put it out there. So what I decided to do was take responsibility for it and keep going. It's not always easy. There aren't many barristers doing it at the moment. So it can sometimes feel like a little bit like you're out on a limb doing something different. But I do think it's really valuable, and I think it's worth pursuing and keeping going with.
That's lovely, thank you. And yeah, I love what you said about humanising the sort of your day-to-day is excellent. And everyone loves a get ready with me video or photo. You know, it makes things available to people, and yeah, like I said, it really humanises things. You mentioned, this is veering off social media, but just because I'm very curious, please indulge me. You mentioned, you know, there's some things about the bar that you find really, really special and you really enjoy. What are those? What tell us a little bit about, you know, wax lyrical about what it is that you love so much.
So one example is, for example, the ceremony that I was getting ready for when I took that photo. when you go to it was a ceremony for the swearing in of a new High Court judge. It was Mr. Justice Garrido, who was one of my pupil supervisors. And what that meant was that he was being elevated from being a barrister and being a part-time judge to being a full-time judge of the High Court. And that is incredibly special. It is something that it's such a lot of hard work goes into, and you have to be the best of the best. You have to be to start to go down that path. And as a Chambers, we were also excited about it, and loads of us went over to the Royal Courts of Justice and we watched the ceremony. And it has all of the traditions that run the risk potentially of alienating people. We are all dressed up in all the robes. All of the judges are dressed up in their ceremonial robes, and they are extraordinarily fancy and beautiful, and it's all such a spectacle. Now, some people might be concerned about actually, who does that serve, and does it run the risk of alienating people? And I think it's really important to be mindful of that. And I'm mindful of that whilst I celebrate it, because it's really important that we celebrate the achievements of people who have done such a lot of good and who are contributing to justice and client care and all of those things that we all agree are so important. And it's really important to, I would say, to keep hold of that and celebrate it, whilst also talking about the things that are more relatable. So we can talk about actually, who are the people who are wearing the robes? What have they done that's different? And I was really proud when I was at that ceremony, because we had the First Lady Chief Justice presiding, which is hugely monumental, and lots of the female barristers in the audience were so excited to say, look at the sign on the door that says Lady Chief Justice, and look at her presiding over this ceremony with everybody watching. And she told a story from my pupillage when she was doing her speech, and it was a story about my pupillage interview. And I'd gone in for my interview, and I'd just turned 22, and I was so nervous, and I was so determined to impress the panel. And I got asked a question, which was this, and it was, what's a film that you watched recently that you did not enjoy? And my answer was Bride Wars. I had not enjoyed Bride Wars with Anne Hathaway, and that was my answer. And so then I was told, right, now turn to this member of the panel, Damien Garrido, and sell it to him. And I had to sell Bride Wars to this very experienced, highly intellectual male member of Chambers. And this was the story that she told. And I thought, how amazing is this? Look at all of these really talented people in their ceremonial dress, celebrating the achievements of all of the individuals there who are present, really, celebrating the friendship at the bar, celebrating the achievements of people who have worked really hard throughout their whole careers for 20, 30 years to do what's right for other people. And here we are having a laugh about my interview, which ended up being 10 minutes of chat about Bride Wars, because that's real life. And all of that is important too. So I think that juxtaposition is one of the things that's really magical about the bar. Keep the robes, keep all of those things that mark the tradition, the commitment, the intellect, the skill that goes into the job, but don't forget to make it relatable for the people who are coming in as well.
That's lovely, thank you. And I completely agree, it's always lovely to see people taking pride and to keep the functions around you that instill that within people. I think it's always advantageous to have, if nothing else, because like we were saying earlier about commitment and resilience and endurance, it's going to spur you on.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and I think what we desperately need to know is, did he then go and watch Bride Wars?
Do you know, I have to ask him that question. I never have.
No.
I suspect he would just laugh at me. I don't think he would tell me yes or no.
Well, that's very diplomatic of him. Wow, I'm going to have to look up Bride Wars now. Excellent. So to go from tradition and sort of dispelling mystique around the bar to something a little bit more modern, we're going to talk about AI now.
Yeah.
What tools, and I appreciate this is a bit of a vehemently sort of vicious sort of turn towards it. But as we know, AI isn't coming, it's here. We're a firm believer here at LexisNexis that, lawyers, barristers aren't going to be replaced by AI, but they may be replaced by lawyers or barristers that are using AI. What AI tools have you personally used so far? How do you apply it to your work? Do you like them? Do you not like them? We want to hear all the nitty-gritty.
I have used Lexis Plus AI in my case preparation. I am at the start of my AI journey. I don't use it for all my cases, and I find it hard to envisage that I ever will. I don't think I will. What I have used it for so far is case preparation, and I've used it really in two ways. The first is as a replacement, effectively for the moments where I would ordinarily turn to a friend in chambers and say to them, that case with that judge, it was about 2 years ago, and it was about this particular thing, but I can't remember the citation, can't remember the initials, can't remember anything else about it. And someone in chambers would pipe up and say, oh yes, the case you're looking for is Re G, I remember exactly the one, and I would type in this rough citation and I would ping it up. Now, if it is 10 o'clock at night and I am writing a skeleton argument and I think, there was a case and it was about a year ago, I can narrow it down using AI and I can get there quite quickly. So that's a really helpful, quite casual way of using AI. The other way that I think AI can be useful in case preparation is very much as a springboard. Now, I love legal research, and I think what it's really important to remember, particularly when you're talking about how AI won't replace lawyers, is that for every skeleton argument that I write that has maybe 2 cases cited for each legal point that I want to make, I've read at least 6 cases. I don't just read the ones that I've used. I'm reading around the area. I'm drawing connections between the different cases, between the different points that I might want to make. And then I narrow it down to my best points or the closest factual cases to the argument that I'm making. But there's a lot of extra work that goes on as well. So I wouldn't be able necessarily to rely on AI to do all of that for me. AI might be able to tell me what the most relevant case is, but part of the process of writing the skeleton argument and preparing the points that you're going to make is reading around the subject as well. And as you're reading those cases, and as you're reading them in full, and then you click on the next link to the next case, you can feel it in your brain. Your brain is stretching. I was thinking when you read the case papers, your brain starts to fill up. You're remembering a whole load of facts. You're remembering page numbers, images, paragraphs, lines in statements, details about the people that are involved in the cases. And then as you're doing your legal research, your brain really starts to stretch. And all of a sudden, everything's firing, and you're reading one case and it takes you to the next one, takes you to the next one. And then by the time you go to court, you might have quite a concise document, but you have a whole bank of extra knowledge that you can draw upon as well. And you know why you've chosen those cases to make the points. And that's where I use AI occasionally as a springboard. I might use it to find the first point, or I might use it to read the first practice note or summary. Then after that part comes the deep dive. That's when I go and read the cases in full. And it's a really important part of case preparation is to go away and read the case in full. Partly because you have to know what material you're discarding. You have to know what you're getting rid of to make the points, and you have to know why you're getting rid of it as well. And that's why I would always describe AI as the springboard. It can be that quick way of getting your starting point. And in that, it has the potential to make us work much more efficiently. You're not starting with a completely blank slate and trying to work out, where do I start here? It's really easy to go to AI and find that initial practice note, or that something that's going to spark your own creativity, your own innovation, your own thoughts about how the case is linked together. So that's how I would encourage others to use it as well, as that springboard. I think it's really important that we don't try to use AI for everything. A really important part of being a barrister is having good judgment. You have to really develop your judgment, and you have to learn to trust it as well. You have to trust that you are doing the learning, you're doing the preparation, and you're building a bank of experience. That means you are really well placed to make judgment calls about strategy, arguments, and client care. I think when I came to the bar, if I'd had AI there the whole time, it would have been really tempting to just check everything. Let me just check that I've got that right. Let me check if I'm on the right tracks. And I think we have to be really mindful of that, because it may well have been something that could have slowed down the confidence that I was building in my own judgment. I come to AI from a huge position of privilege of having already started that work and having my own judgment that I can trust and my own experience. So when I use AI, it's either to use it as a springboard for research or to check something that I already feel I've reached the answer on, just to make sure I haven't missed a relevant case or a new case or anything like that. I think we have to be really mindful that as junior barristers are coming in, that there may be that temptation to go to it the whole time just to check. And that may have its benefits in certain situations, but it mustn't be at the cost of developing that confidence in your own research and in your own skills, and importantly, in your own judgment. Because once you start to compromise your faith in your own judgment, that can lead to real difficulties in being confident at court and being confident in the case that you're presenting.
Absolutely. No, I think that a lot of people would agree with you in this notion of you're using AI to check that your judgment is correct, as opposed to you're checking that the judgment of the AI is correct. We definitely hear that when, in feedback and insight sessions that we do here, which we do all the time with our customers and prospects. I appreciate, like you said, you're at the beginning of your AI journey. I think most people are. Everyone will be very empathetic with that. What do you think, having spoken to some of your colleagues, their impression is of AI and how you see them using it too?
I think for a lot of members of Chambers, quite similar. So far from the members of Chambers that I've spoken to who are in established practice, it's nobody's go-to for absolutely every case. It's part of a toolkit, in the same way that going to the library is, or using Google, or using Lexis in the more traditional sense, or Westlaw, or whichever you subscribe to, reading articles in Counsel magazine or whatever other professional magazine that you subscribe to. All of those are items in the toolkit, as is drawing on the experience of other colleagues as well, having a conversation in Chambers about what their experience is of a certain type of case, or what success they've had running a certain line of argument. It is one piece of the puzzle. There are always going to be some practitioners who are resistant to using AI, and there are always going to be some who think it's absolutely the best thing and that's going to be their go-to. And I suspect that probably my Chambers is reflective of others as well, which is that the majority of people fall somewhere in the middle, which is likely to be identifying that it has a purpose in the right circumstances and with the right safeguards and using the right tools as well. It is likely to be useful in promoting efficiency and in developing legal research skills. And it's really important to make sure that we don't fall behind. Like you said earlier, AI is here already. And I suspect that lots of chambers are having conversations about what we should be using, how we should be using it, how it can be useful, and what we have to be mindful of as well. And the point about confidence, I think, is relevant to that as well. It's what could the pitfalls be of this? How might it really impact on the professional development of the individual? And let's make sure that we are using it in the right way, so that what we're bringing really is that level of enhanced efficiency, that it is an additional tool that we can draw upon in the right circumstances to make sure that we get to the answer quicker, or that we can expand the research that we would otherwise have done, look at new cases, look at different practice notes. I mean, lots of people fall into habits of going to the same resources to check. You go to the things that you're familiar with, that you can navigate easily because you use them all the time. One of the benefits of AI is that it might show you things that wouldn't necessarily be your go-to. You might read it and think, actually, that's really interesting. I would like to read more of this, and you keep going. So I suspect that most people fall somewhere in the middle of that spectrum at the moment as well, which is, okay, we need to all develop our understanding of when we should be using it and how.
No, definitely. It's one of the things that we have heard recently as well, when speaking to other barristers, that, clients have come back and said, we need to know that the judgment that you provided us, the work that you're doing is based off your own judgment and not something that's entirely produced by AI. I know we've all everyone will have read various legal scary reports about cases being thrown out because of incorrect information being used. So yeah, it's definitely something that we acknowledge as part of a toolkit. But it sounds like you consider it as part of that kind of a necessity.
Especially given that we're at the start of AI.
Yes.
And it's not something that I anticipate going away or being reduced. It's something that I anticipate growing and becoming much more relevant. I anticipate it improving in quality. I anticipate the bank of resources that it draws upon becoming bigger as well. And I suspect that that's also the view of most other people, that this is something that probably over time is going to get better and better and better. The question is, when do you start your journey? I've made my decision to start it now as it grows. I think it's much easier to do that. And it's easy to relate that to areas of practice as well. So for example, forced marriage protection orders were not a thing when I started my work as a family lawyer. Forced marriage protection orders were devised and created after I was already in practice. It's much easier to decide, right, I'm going to start learning about that as soon as it comes in and to stay on top of the case law and grow with it than it is to come to something that's already really well established and there's already loads of case law about. And I think that's likely to be the same with AI. I would much rather start my journey when most people are at the start of it and learn with them than try and catch up later.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you. And if you don't mind indulging me a little bit more, I wanted to speak a little bit more about family law, obviously an area I'm extremely passionate about. And it's a very open question to you. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are in terms of any upcoming law developments in the area, and what topics do you think really need to be dealt with and that would really benefit the practice area itself?
I think one of the topics that we are all going to be talking about at court as public law children practitioners is post-adoption contact. Now, there hasn't particularly been a huge change in the law on post-adoption contact, but the Family Justice Council has released some new guidance about it. And I think what everybody is starting to acknowledge is that this is an area in which there's been a huge cultural shift recently. And it's really important that as the family bar, we make sure that we are moving with that. So it's partly a cultural shift that has taken place. We are hearing words much more now than we used to, such as trauma, identity, and narrative. Those are three words that we hear quite a lot about at the moment, and they aren't words that necessarily had so much emphasis in the past. When we start talking, when we start listening to research about people's identity, how they identify their own narrative, the impact of trauma, it's easy to see how there's actually been a cultural shift towards post-adoption contact and what sort of contact meets the needs of children as they grow up and into the long term. So there's been this cultural shift that we need to acknowledge, that we are talking about these things more. We are talking about identity, we're talking about narratives, and we need to make sure that we are learning from that as well, and that we are applying it to the decisions that are being made for real children now. I think there's also been a practical shift. Social media is a really obvious one. So the rise of social media and the access that people have to a huge digital footprint means that it is going to be much easier for children who have been adopted to make contact with their biological or natural family. And we have to be prepared for that, because some of the children who are now teenagers and who are really social media savvy were born in a time when actually 15 years ago, social media wasn't nearly as prevalent and we weren't talking about it. We didn't know how far it would reach. And it wasn't discussed in the same way. We have to be realistic now about social media. Like AI, it's not going away. For better or for worse, what you think the advantages are or the disadvantages are, we have to manage it and we have to work with it. That has an impact on the decisions that the court needs to make for babies now about what their contact should be like with their families. Another issue which I've often raised at court, and I'm not sure how many people have really caught on to this yet, is the rise of things like ancestry DNA. And it's not only relevant to adopted children, but it's relevant to children who are born from donor sperm and donor eggs and so on. Online DNA swabs are becoming more and more accessible. They're becoming cheaper, they're easier to access. And it is not hard to anticipate a situation, or to imagine a situation where you have a young adult at university who mentions in passing to his friends, I'd be really interested to explore some more about my DNA and my history and my ancestry. And the friends all club together and buy them a DNA kit. And off it goes, and all of a sudden they are learning a huge amount about who they are in the genetic and biological sense and what their identity is. And again, I think that's relevant to the question of post-adoption contact. How are we promoting people's sense of identity, the narrative that people have, and their understanding of what makes them them? It's about what it is to be a human and what it is to be a person. And I think we have to be really mindful of all of those things when we're making decisions about post-adoption contact. And those aren't issues that were relevant 20 years ago. You didn't have access to all of these things. And so what we're doing at the moment in family law is we are working out what has already happened, what might happen in the future, and how we can make sure that the decisions that are being made in court are going to promote young people's welfare and their psychological and emotional well-being all the way through their childhood and then into adulthood as well. And that's a really important topic for discussion this year as we all read the Family Justice Council guidelines and work out how that is going to be applied in reality. It's not because there's been a huge change in the law, it's because we are all looking at the research and working out what the cultural shift means for how we apply that law and what those developments mean for how we apply the law as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really, really interesting, and we're really lucky to have had you speak at such a level of detail and breadth and depth. So thank you.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.